And okay, let me make you the
I think we are
host,
good to
sir.
start.
Yeah. Let me make you the host. You just make me the co-host, sir. So in case
Sure, sure,
interruption is going to happen, I'll just.
sure,
All right, sir. Thank you. All set to go, sir. Thank you.
sure. Thanks, Pankaj. First of all, I welcome you all and thanks for joining in into this session, which is the AWS DevOps program, which is offered by 𝗂𝗏 Technologies. So in today's session, let me quickly share my screen to begin with. So in today's session, what we are going to do. So certainly this is a demo session. So you must have certain thoughts in your mind wherein you want to understand what this session is all about, what 𝗂𝗏 technology with this session is going to provide you, and what benefits you will get once you complete this session. And that is what I'm going to talk about in today's session with a slight uh, kind of crisp presentation deck. I'll open up with lots of questions, which certainly you will have in your mind, and all the audience which you do have today, so that you can just ask me all the questions and you can just clarify it with any of the thoughts in your mind, which will help you in understanding or pursuing this path of AWS DevOps learning. So I'll first begin with my introduction. Who your trainer is, first of all, you need to know about your trainer. So certainly, to introduce myself, my name is Chandrasekhar. I do have approximately 16 years of experience by now. And currently, I am working as a solution architect for one multinational organization. And in my current role, I do design infrastructure based on the requirement which I get from stakeholders, which I get from project managers, and that design finally reaches out to engineering team, to BAU team, and all others. So as a part of my experience, I have started my career from Linux administrator, and then I moved into scripting because I always had a neck of scripting since very beginning, automation since very beginning. So I was easily able to move into DevOps domain, and that is where AWS was growing. Gradually, I moved into AWS cloud, and from there, my career moved into Azure. And when DevOps came in, which was a milestone achieved by IT industry to transform everything which was done in a manual fashion by different teams to automated approach, followed by CI/CD pipeline, followed by DevOps pipeline. That is where I moved into DevOps. And after all these experiences, currently I'm working as a solution architect. In my experience, I do have working experience in a wide variety of tools, all which is pretty much essential for you to understand, for you to learn, and which will be a part of this curriculum as well, offered by 𝗂𝗏. And in those tools, you will understand the practical usage of those tools in IT industry. Because with whatever experience I came in industries, I'll be able to project it to you. I'll be able to demonstrate in front of you so that you understand how actually the use cases looks like, how all these tool stacks can combine together, can work together to to accomplish the use cases which organization comes up with to deliver a fine product to end users. So this is all about me. Now let's begin and let's try to understand what this DevOps engineering training program is and why it's hosted on AWS Cloud. Let's try to understand this. Okay. So now let's try to first understand what this training is about. So with this training, 𝗂𝗏 has came up with the process, with the framework to give you ample amount of knowledge on a number of tools, which is pretty much needed at this point of time for any of the IT industry to create automation, to bring automation. Because nowadays, you doesn't matter which technology you belong to, whichever company you are willing to work with, there is automation mindset. Every company wants to transform their existing setup into automated setup. And in order to achieve that automated setup, DevOps pipelines is pretty much important. Scripting is pretty much important. You want to have certain deployments in place, or think about any of the software which you're using at this point. Certainly that software reaches out to some upgrade, perhaps some patch upgrade, perhaps some analytical job runs, perhaps some batch job runs, and it performs certain upgrades to existing software which you're using at this point of time. Now this we can do manually, which we were doing approximately 1 or 2 decades back. But now gradually, since the IT industry has changed, since in IT industry we have automation in place, every company, every organization is looking for one automation approach. And with this program, we are going to make you aware, we are going to make you provide you great information on how these automated tools fits in DevOps framework. This training is all about giving you idea about various tool stacks, which is very much needed to perform continuous integration, continuous deployment. Don't worry, in case if you don't understand continuous integration or continuous deployment, because that is what we are going to cover in this session. Now, again, I'll just bring in a live example. Think about any software. Think about the Zoom software which we are using at this point of time to connect to this meeting. This Zoom, when it came up, certainly won't have these many features. The features which it is having at this point is we are able to connect with our audience over audio call. Perhaps if I turn on the video, you will be able to see me. There is a video call facility also. There is a facility wherein I'm able to share my screen. So screen sharing facility is also there. Certain workspaces is also there. Transcript facility is there. Chat facility is there, wherein we can able to communicate pretty much well, not only with audio, not only with video, but also with the we do have options to communicate over chat. So these are separate features which Zoom came up with. Certainly, when Zoom released its this application, it won't have all the features in it. Gradually they evolved. Gradually they evolved from one feature when and marketed that feature, which reached out to end users when users' response were pretty much well based on users' response, based on customers' response. They kept on adding additional features to existing application, and this happens pretty much to any of the software which we are using at this point of time. Adding new feature, appending, increasing the usage, functionality of any application is something which IT industry strives with at this point. Now, this is called continuous integration, a kind of brief I'm giving at this point of time. And this is what will be a crux of DevOps to combine the continuous integration. If you consider these two as separate words, it's integrating continuously some new features to existing application, continuous integration. This is continuous integration won't take your application to end users. If you are continuously integrating, customers still don't know that you have added any additional feature to existing application. For that, one additional component is needed to which we call as continuous deployment. With continuous deployment, the deployment which happens continuously, your application, your newer version of application, the newer feature which you have added to existing application reaches to customer pretty much well. This is called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Just an overview of what we are going to learn in this curriculum. And this is what DevOps is. Now, DevOps itself, if you'll think about the term DevOps, what is a DevOps? What is software development lifecycle? How this term is coined in the first place. We'll get into that part also in few minutes. So now, with this training, we are going to train you on DevOps best practices. So first, what is DevOps? Certainly, is DevOps a team? Is DevOps a mindset? Is DevOps another methodology? What DevOps is? So if we'll break the term DevOps, it's Dev plus Ops. Dev stands for development team. Ops stands for operations team. Now, development team comprises of all the team. You can count in developers, count in testing engineers, count in quality analyst, any of the engineers who do not actually manage infrastructure could be considered as a development team, developers. Now, there was a time, certainly a decade or perhaps more than a decade ago, when developers used to just spend all their time in developing application and never bothered about even interacting with operations team to understand how, yeah, the application, whatever they're developing, is reaching out to customers. But gradually this needed changed because of lots of fallbacks, lots of setbacks which organization has faced because of their working in silos approach. They wanted to combine both the team. They wanted to bring together both the teams. And that is where this term DevOps coined. DevOps, which brought development team and operations team together. And with this training, you will be learning all the best practices which has been followed by organization in in last one decade over the time to bring to groom this DevOps process, DevOps methodology, DevOps mindset, so that it's actually reached to this height, so that approximately 90% of the company across the globe is already using DevOps in their setup. Now, with this training, you'll be learning software development lifecycle process also. Because whenever we talk about automation, we always think about software development lifecycle, which is also abbreviated as SDLC, software development lifecycle. How software development happens, because any of the development, any of the application which you can think about follows a cycle, and it's kind of continuous process cycle. All the steps which forms that software development life cycle is a continuous process. New feature has to be added again, the cycle begins, quite the same procedure begins again. And with this training we'll be talking about that. Now, in order to complete this, certainly you need certain tools. And I'll be talking in a kind of normal pace. Say, in case if you think that my pace is more, you can just ask me to reduce my pace. In case if you feel as if my pace is low, you can just ask me to increase my pace. Or in case if you want to communicate with me, you can just raise your hand. I'm continuously monitoring any of the hand raises as well. And in case if you want to just post your question, we do have chat options also. So feel free to post your question, raise your hand, stop me where you do have any questions, any doubts. Though, as I'm completing my flow, certainly I'll give a pause so that you can just ask any of the questions which you do have in your mind. Okay, so software development life cycle. And in order to complete this software development life cycle, we do have number of phases, number of stages. Each stage is completed, is accomplished by the usage of certain tools. And we are going to cover a plenty of tools, which is pretty much needed to complete a software development life cycle, which is in use by the organization at this point of time. Certainly, after completion of this session, you will think about transforming your career from whatever you're doing at this point of time to DevOps. And with the idea, with the knowledge, with the working experience, with the hands-on demonstration, which we are going to provide you in this session, you will get ample amount of knowledge so that you can transform your career and you can just easily fit in any of the job profile, any of the job requirements which company is coming up with in DevOps domain. Okay, so now whenever we talk about DevOps, certainly you need a platform for your application to be deployed. There was a time when we do have data centers in place. Data centers had servers, routers, switches for external communication to happen, for an internal communication to happen within an organization. Organizations, computers, organizations, employees should be communicating with each other by perhaps using some private IP configuration, and the traffic may go out from company to www by using some IP, some internet gateways. There was this kind of setup, and all these setup were initially maintained in companies' own data centers. But that but that were expensive. Companies used to just have to manage data center engineers, have to take care of all the servers and equipments which were needed to host their application 24 cross 7 for all the days in a year. Now that was a kind of overhead for the company, because say a company, for example, if you think about Amazon's main business is, and I'm not talking about AWS, I'm talking about Amazon e-commerce application, e-commerce product of Amazon. So now their main business is e-commerce. So now think about if AWS is not there and Amazon has to run their e-commerce business, instead of thinking about what products they are going to host on their website so that customers will be more attracted, they have to spend some overhead, spend lots of money in maintaining their own data centers, maintaining certain number of employees to manage data centers and all the equipment, servers, whatever will be there to host their e-commerce website, which is a kind of overhead, extra effort which they have to put. So now somebody is there who is saying that, okay, fine, I'll take care of all your overhead. You just focus on your business. And that is where these cloud vendors came in. I'm not talking about AWS at this point of time. I'm talking about any of the cloud vendor. And any of the cloud vendor, when they came, their selling point was you just focus on your business. I'll take care of all your infrastructure components. I'll take care of all your infrastructure related requirements. And it can be anything. It can be your servers, it can be databases, it can be hosting your application to website, it can be managing traffic to website, it can be networking, it can be, you can think about any of the infrastructure related component. Cloud or any of the cloud vendor came up and they said that I'm going to take care of this. You just focus on how you're going to manage your application. You can just focus on the business for your organization. And this was a selling point of any of the cloud vendor. AWS is the leading cloud vendor at this point of time, wherein it's capturing approximately 35 to 40% of market. Second comes Azure, after that GCP, and there are many small vendors in market, but AWS is the leading cloud provider at this point of time. Now, this is what this is why AWS is so important, because AWS offers a platform, AWS, which stands for Amazon Web Services. It offers a platform so that company, instead of worrying about maintaining infrastructure where their applications will be hosted, they are only worrying about running their business, running their applications, managing their applications, and remaining everything is taken care by AWS. This is why AWS is pretty much needed. Don't worry, we'll talk about lots of details. As a part of this curriculum, we are going to cover AWS in huge detail, wherein there will be a number of topics. We will be covering servers, different kinds of servers, which you can create, different operating systems of servers, which you can create, which you can work on. Nowadays, as we know, majority of the servers, I'll say 75% of the industry is running on Linux operating system, and that could be anything. There are a number of distributions in Linux: Debian, Ubuntu. You do have Red Hat. You do have a number of different vendors are there, distributions are there in Linux, which is in use. But 75% of the servers are Linux at this point of time in IT industry. So we'll be focusing on that. We'll be talking a lot about Linux, its operating systems, and the commands, which is pretty much needed for you to work, for you to be efficient while handling any of the DevOps tool. And not only this, while learning about AWS, I'll also cover the topic of minimum privileges, because it's very much important to maintain security. What sort of security components AWS offers so that any of the customer which you can think about gets inclined towards using AWS applications, hosting their applications on AWS. And there are very big names. Like you think about Netflix. Netflix is completely on AWS at this point of time. Now, they are just offering such a huge data which requires huge amount of security, perhaps copyrights, privacy on AWS. It's all hosted on AWS. Certainly security is needed. For that, AWS offers a number of different security frameworks to manage that. AWS-based firewalls, IAM, KMS, lots of frameworks are there, which we'll be covering as a part of this curriculum. Okay, so now who uses AWS? This is what AWS is. So is it only the multinational organizations who will be able to use AWS? Who uses AWS and where AWS is? I live in India. AWS, Amazon, it's a US based company. So how can I use it? It's a US based company. I'm using it from India. Say I'm hosting a an application. Say for example, Geo, which is Indian-based company, is wants to host their application on AWS. Well, and I, being a customer who lives in India, wants to access any of the Geo applications. Will the traffic, in case if I have to access Geo application, will my traffic route over United States and come back to India? Is this so? If it's so, then it's going to take perhaps lots of latency. Then who uses? How can I increase the accessibility, performance of my application while using AWS? I'll be talking about that in this session. So just to give a brief, AWS is not only used by a multinational organization, but individuals like you, me, in case if I want to practice any application, still I can use AWS. We'll be learning how to create our accounts on AWS and how to use AWS as an individual user. So who uses AWS and where AWS is, where AWS data centers are, AWS can be used by anyone. It can be used by a multinational organization. It can be used by individual users, and their data centers are across the globe at this point of time. They have huge count of data centers. They have huge count of geographical location distributions, which makes AWS a kind of widely used cloud platform, which almost every company is having their application deployed on top of it. Now, when any of the customers uses AWS cloud vendor, how do they pay it? Certainly, they have to pay certain costs to users when they're using AWS hosted applications. And how can they limit it? For example, if I am individual user, and in case if I do have a budget, because perhaps I'm a student, I'm using it just for my learning purpose. Can I set some budget there in AWS? So that it should not cross, say, certainly $1, maybe $2 every month? Yes. And how AWS charges? Does AWS offers any facilities, any offers by means of which I'll be able to efficiently use AWS applications? Yes, AWS does it. And that also we are going to learn how to set a budget, how to set up my AWS infrastructure or applications or resources so that I can just use it whatever I want to use it, or till whatever interval I want to use it. AWS, I can make AWS charge me only for that, only till that time, only till that point of time. We'll be learning that also in our session. Okay, so now I'll be moving on the various trends of Google, wherein I'll be comparing about various cloud platforms. But prior to that, I'll just give a quick pause in case if anyone has any questions, any thoughts, any doubt in mind till this point of time. You can ask me. Anyone?
Guys, if you have any questions, feel free to ask because
हेलो
yes, Imran, go ahead, please.
Yes, Simran.
थैंक यू सर। अच्छा सर, इसमें सर इसकी प्री रिक्विजिट्स क्या होंगी सर? अगर कोई जिस तरह फॉर एग्जांपल बहुत से लोग यहाँ पर उन्होंने CCNA किया होगा सर, और वो आएंगे तो सर हमारे लिए तो ये स्क्रिप्ट्स या ये चीज़ें जो हैं ये बिल्कुल फ्रेश है ना, हमने कभी पहले स्क्रिप्ट्स या इससे ऑटोमेशन में कुछ नहीं किया, तो इसका सर क्या पर्सपेक्टिव होगा जो नेटवर्किंग के
राइट।
बैकग्राउंड से लोग होंगे?
हाँ, लेकिन बड़ी बात यह है इमरान, जब आपने नेटवर्किंग करा है तो ऑब्वियसली आपको कमांड्स का आइडिया है। आपने नेटवर्किंग में काफी सारे कमांड्स एग्जीक्यूट किए होंगे, राइट?
जी जी सर, जी सर।
जी। तो अभी क्या है ना कि जो ऑटोमेशन होता है वो होता क्या है एक्चुअली, मतलब ऑटोमेशन कमांड से कैसे अलग होता है? आप जब कमांड्स एग्जीक्यूट करते हो तो आपके पास एक कमांड लाइन इंटरफेस है, उसमें वन कमांड एट ए टाइम आप एग्जीक्यूट करते हो और यू आर एबल टू व्यू इट्स आउटपुट इन सम अदर वे। अब ऑटोमेशन होता क्या है इमरान, अगर आप 3 या 4 कमांड्स को एक साथ एग्जीक्यूट कर दो, एक फाइल बना लो, उस फाइल में वही 3 और 4 कमांड्स जो आपने अभी तक एग्जीक्यूट कर रखा है CCNA करते समय, जो भी कमांड लाइन आपने यूज किया हुआ है उसमें, अब मैं उसी को कंबाइन कर देता हूँ, एक फाइल बना देता हूँ और कहता हूँ भैया कि जब मैं फाइल रन करूंगा तो वो 3 और 4 कमांड्स वन आफ्टर द अदर रन करो। दिस इज ऑटोमेशन। सो ऑटोमेशन कुछ अलग नहीं है जो आपने करके रखा हुआ है। हाँ, लेकिन
हम्म,
ऑब्वियसली उस चीज का आइडिया कैसे फाइल बनाना है, कैसे मल्टीपल कमांड्स को उस फाइल में डालना है, वो हम इस कोर्स के थ्रू आपको प्रोवाइड करेंगे, वो नॉलेज।
ओके सर। ओके सर, थैंक यू।
एनीवन एल्स? Enough. So now, what I'll do is I'll just give a quick comparison. Though I gave you a kind of idea of what AWS is, what AWS brings in, what chunk of market, what percentage of market as of now AWS is holding, just to give a very high level overview of what Google says, and the newer data will be even more better and even more inclined towards AWS usages, or the perhaps the percentage rise which each of the cloud vendor is capturing in market at this point of time could be even better. But still, if you'll compare the capture of margin, the deployment of their AWS is still leading it. Now, AWS is leading it because of its comfort of use, because of its pay-as-you-go model, because of its wide list of services which it's offering. You name the platform, because whenever we talk about IT is divided into a number of different segments. It's divided into development, or even before development, it's divided into its big wins with the planning section. After planning, development happens. After development, it gets tested. After it gets tested, it is deployed to certain platform. Nowadays, we do have even the trend of with artificial intelligence, wherein everyone thinks about a number of different models which can generate things for me based on various datas which we are going to feed into our system, like Gen AI, ML, data science, artificial intelligence, which are nothing but the subset of artificial intelligence. Now, AWS offers services which fits in every category. Think about databases. AWS has a wide range of databases, which every organization needs at this point of time to manage, to make their applications, to make their perhaps OLTP, online transactional performance, more effective. And in order to do that, AWS offers wide variety of core CPUs, maybe compute resources, maybe storage resources, which can very efficiently run applications hosted on it. That is why AWS is getting such edge over any other cloud vendor. They have wide list of applications, wide list of resources, and organizations based on their needs, and their wants more memory than performance. Some organization needs high performance. For example, if you think about share market needs more performance than perhaps maintaining lots of memory. But think about some other, perhaps e-commerce website perhaps needs more memory than performance. You can bear with the slowness of website, but they need to have huge chunk of data so that they can offer large products, large variety of products, large groups of products to customers. Now, based on the needs of each of the organization, they want different types of resources, and AWS offers that. There is a wide list in compute services, storage services, databases, networking, and security. and a number of different categories. AI, a number of different categories are there, wherein AWS do have wide list of resources. This is where AWS is leading market at this point of time. And that is what even the Google trend says. And this is what you're going to learn being a part of this course curriculum. Now, let's talk a bit about growth of AWS DevOps, how DevOps fits in on AWS. Now we spoke about DevOps and we got some idea what DevOps is, wherein I said that DevOps is nothing but a kind of methodology, a kind of thought process which brought different teams together. Instead of development teams working aloof, working in silos, or operations team working aloof, working in silos, they started working together to bring in automation in entire software development lifecycle. We have a number of stages. When I talk about software development lifecycle, software development lifecycle includes development process. Perhaps the developed package gets compiled, then tested, then packaged. After it packaged, nowadays we do have scanning also, in order to ensure that all the applications are properly following shift left approach. A number of tools are there: Sonar Cube, Trivi, check marks, a number of tools are there which is helping organization to ensure any of the package which they form passes lots of security patterns even before they reach to custom under dev category. Now, when this is done, ultimately it has to be deployed somewhere. It has to reach to customers, and that is where operations team comes in. Operations team, we do have networking team, security team, we do have servers team, that even Windows servers team, Windows admin, Linux admin, operations team. We do have monitoring team, SOC team, NOC team. Different teams were there at certain point of time, and they were entirely taking care of operations part. Now, what DevOps has done, then let's first understand. I'll just give a high level overview of the challenge, why even DevOps came. And this is very interesting because while different teams were working in silos, there were communication gap. Now, to give you a very simple example, consider that any of the developer is building an application. Now, as you know, 90% of the application which we are using at this point of time is Java based application. Now, consider that any application developer is working to build an application which is using, say, Java version, say 17, which is very compatible with, say, maybe while they were working on the development, they did this setup with them. The application developers did this setup and they were working on version 32 while just doing the development part. They did all sort of testing, but while deployment, operations team were perhaps maintaining older version of Debian, because perhaps the organization do not have licenses for maintaining such huge list of servers to the utmost to the latest version. There could be hundreds of reasons, but they're at the older version. Now, application is developed with Debian version 32, but by the time it reaches to operation, which is actually hosting application, which reaches to end users, it's still at the older version. So certainly Java version 17 is not going to work properly with the older version of Debian. And that is where this communication gap comes. And this caused a number of different problems to customers. There were a number of deadline breach. They had to pay lots of penalty to their clients. All the service based organization has to pay lots of penalties to clients, and number of different problems were there. To overcome this, what companies have said, why not to bring all these teams together so that they talk about application, its development from day one of their applications, of their application development, of the perhaps the operations team starts working on designing, defining, setup of infrastructure from day one, and based on which developers and testing team members can also parallelly do their development and testing. And this happened because they brought in a methodology called DevOps. I mean, there was a traditional methodology to which we call as waterfall methodology, which was there nearly 2 decades back. The initial problem which I was talking about was a problem of waterfall methodology, wherein different teams were working in silos. But gradually we came into agile methodology, and now we are in DevOps methodology process, which brought in entire all the teams which is working in a software development lifecycle together. This is how growth of DevOps happened, and how growth of AWS DevOps happened. Now, already these tools were in place. A number of different tools, which I'm going to talk about in few minutes, were already there. What AWS said, instead of you using it separately, instead of you managing these tools separately, you manage this on my platform, on perhaps these vendors. For example, say I talk about any of the tool ABC, these DevOps engineers were using ABC tools separately. What AWS has done, AWS has signed a contract with ABC tool and said that ABC tool, you work along with me. And now DevOps engineer, instead of using ABC separately, they started using ABC, which is already managed and hosted by Amazon, hosted by AWS. And this is how growth of AWS DevOps happened. So it's not as in DevOps and AWS were working together, where were there since very beginning. AWS came separately. DevOps was growing at its own pace. But when AWS found certain opportunity to attract IT industry by having collaboration with a number of different tool vendors which DevOps engineers were using, they did not miss this chance, and they collaborated with those organizations. Now DevOps and AWS is going together. This DevOps methodology, you name the tool, AWS do have collaboration along with those tool vendors, and they are working together. A number of tools are there, which I'm going to talk about in few minutes. Now, a quick idea about what CI/CD is. Like the way I said, CI stands for continuous integration, CD stands for continuous deployment. Now, what is there in CI? Like the way I said, with CI, with continuous integration, customers will not be able to access application. CI is more about developers working on development process of application. To begin any development, to perform any development, it's very much important to plan things properly. Nowadays, things are very planned. Nowadays, if you think about having the tasks getting assigned to any employee in an organization, we do have a number of different platforms, number of different tools, like ServiceNow is there, like Jira is there, a number of different tools are there wherein we do have tasks created, and that even tasks are of various categories. Those are categorized into task, epics, spikes. There are a number of different names which we give based on what actually we are going to do by using with the help of those tasks. A planning is very much important. A proper planning leads to more effective product, leads us to generate more effective product, more robust product. Planning is one of the very essential part of SDLC, software development lifecycle, and certainly essential part of continuous integration. So planning happens. After planning happens, with the planning, we get to know that yes, which team will do what. Developers will do what sort of development. Testing team will do what sort of testing. Networking team will do what sort of networking. Will they open any firewall? Will they, what kind of route they are going to add in their route tables? Which route table will be connected to which subnet? Which subnet will be a part of which VPC? What sort of CIDR ranges will be allocated to which VPC? What sort of subnet will be in which availability zone, so on and so forth. We talk about that, we discuss about that in planning phase. Once the planning is done, after that, coding begins. Different teams works on their own part, developers works on coding, and after the code is written, a package is finally built. So what actually reaches I'm sure you would have downloaded a number of different applications which works pretty much smoothly on your machine. For example, Notepad++, which is the simplest one which we are using, or Notepad. Do you actually download the source code of Notepad++? No. What you do, perhaps you download some package, maybe in .exe format, maybe in .zip format, some sort of package you download. And what you do, you just run a wizard, and with that wizard, you just hit on next, 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 and the package is installed on your computer. This is the package. This is the build which is formed. And once the package is formed, the package contains a number of different things. It does not only contain perhaps the source code. Along with that, it contains dependent files, which is needed for the source code to run properly. That is package. Now, everything, once the package is formed, it has to be tested. A number of different sort of testing happens. Certain names are user acceptance testing, penetration testing, smoke testing, integration testing. A number of different names are given by different organizations. Certain standards are UAT, UIT, smoke, and pen testing, which is widely used in any of the organization. A number of different stages. Continuous testing happens. And this testing happens at different stages. You would have heard about different stages: dev, qa, qa2, uat, or maybe some other stage. So what these stages are, these stages are the stages where actually different sort of testing happens on the package. It's not as in if you have deployed your application on qa, it reaches to customer. No, still some testing is going on qa stage. And once it reaches to production in the form of certain release, which we'll be talking about in this session also, we'll create certain releases. We'll see the branching framework by certain tools, and I'll explain you how those release works. And as those release reaches to production, customers is able to view those new features perhaps which you have brought in with this release, which is a part of your application. Now, this is continuous testing and continuous deployment, and that is where release comes, deploy comes, operate comes, monitor comes. And monitoring is very much important, because it's not only the application which you want your customers to use. Also, what you want to do is you want to continuously monitor the performance, perhaps the outage. Now, a few days back, you would have heard about Elon Musk came up with a new product, to which he called as Grokkipedia, which is nothing but a competitor of encyclopedia. But as they brought up with Grokkipedia, it went down because so many customers started using it. But now today, in today's date, it's up. But I believe 2 to 3 days back, when they came up with this Grokkipedia, it went down immediately. How? Because there were wide range of users who started using Grokkipedia, and this application was unable to handle that much load. Now, this is also monitored. Monitoring is very much important. Any of the outage which happens for the application, which is on the application, which any organization releases, is monitored on various grounds: outage, performance, networking, latency. A number of different parameters are there based on which it's monitored. And this is a part of continuous deployment itself. Now, let me quickly explain you which all tools will fit in each of the category. I spoke about planning, I spoke about coding, building, testing, and release, deployment, operate, monitor, again planning. But there must be certain tools which will be using these all activity. So certain tools which fits in, and a number of these tools will be learning in our program also. So in planning, like the way I said, we use ServiceNow, we use Jira board, Kanban board. A number of different boards are there in use at this point of time where planning happens. We do planning in Confluence page also, which is nowadays in use by a number of different organizations. Other than this, for coding part, for keeping your code so that it can be accessed by a number of different employees, perhaps a different team members of a team, we use separate tool like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket. A number of different tools, platforms are there, which allows team to collaborate with each other properly, which allows application code, source code, whatever it's been written by organizations developer, so that they can work together, so that it can be secured, so that it can have high availability. Because say for example, if the developer is writing all the source code in their own computer, and if the computer is scrapped, then perhaps all the code which is written by developers goes in vain. All the effort which developers has put in order to build this application goes in vain. So certainly they want a platform which can maintain high availability, which can ensure that 100% uptime is maintained for the application, for the application code which is written. For that, GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, a number of different vendors or platforms are there. Other than this, for building an application, we do have a different build tool like Gradle is there, Maven is there, Ant is there, Bazel is there, Webpack is there. A number of different tools are there which is used to create the package for us, create a build for us. We are going to talk about these build tools. We are going to talk about these code based maintaining tools. In this session, we are going to cover GitHub, GitHub Actions, and the pipelines which we are going to cover by using GitHub and GitHub Action. In build tool, we'll be learning about Maven because Maven is one of the widely used build tools in use. Other than this, certainly the package is formed, the package has to be tested properly. For testing, JUnit framework is there, AnyUnit framework is there, Selenium is there, a number of different testing framework is in use. Now, once the package is tested, now it is the time when it has to just get deployed. Now, whether there are two options to deploy, whether a Linux administrator will come in, will log in into virtual machine by using SSH connection, and will just execute all the command manually and will deploy it. But now that time has gone where company had only 10 or 15 servers. Now companies are having thousands of servers, and deploying application on thousands of servers manually is a nightmare for any of the Linux administrator. So for that, certain automation is needed, which can manage the deployment of package across all the 1,000 servers altogether, perhaps. And that is where a number of different CI/CD tool comes in. We are going to learn about Jenkins and also GitHub Actions, which is capable enough to perform CI and CD for applications. And now, once the applications are deployed, it's the time to think for an organization on how they want to perform deployment, whether the deployment happens on a virtual machine or perhaps a virtual machine which is managed by, which is behind a load balancer, which is having the capacity to scale in, scale out. Because perhaps in month of December, which is very much approaching, we all will start accessing Amazon website and will start ordering some of the other things. We just now a number of different festivals just went by. In Diwali, we have ordered so many different products for our household, a number of different grocery items, number of different products we have offered. Think about the load which Amazon website would have gone through. That load is much more than on any of the normal day which Amazon website would have seen. Spike in customers increased a lot during these festive season. How they can manage this during the spike time? Do they need to create a number of those different servers? And if they have to do it, will they do it manually? Will there be some administrators sitting just monitoring these spikes and will be just creep on creating this virtual machine if the customer count goes high? If it is, then certainly it's a big problem for any of the administrator. There are a number of different automation method is there, which company thinks when they think about deploying their application. And after that, operation and monitoring, different tools are there which fits in and which we are going to cover. For deployment, we are going to cover the topic of Docker. We'll have Kubernetes to cover. We'll have in-depth in-depth course planning for containerization using Docker as an automation tool, which we are going to cover as a part of this course curriculum. For monitoring, like the way I explained, monitoring is very much important. For monitoring, we are going to cover the topic of Prometheus and Grafana will be there. Prometheus, which is in use a lot nowadays, along with Kubernetes, will understand how Prometheus fetches data from Kubernetes platform and how with the use of Grafana we'll be able to create a well-defined dashboards. Yes, we'll be covering all of this. Now, it's the time for me to give a quick idea of how DevOps job vacancies are there, how companies are looking for a skilled DevOps engineer and what they are demanding from skilled DevOps engineer. With my experience, I came up with the idea because I'm actively participating in taking interviews for my organizations and also actively participating in taking interviews as a freelancer for multiple other organizations as well. Now, these job vacancies of DevOps engineer is demanding great knowledge in tools like GitHub, Bitbucket, GitHub Actions, Jenkins, Kubernetes, Docker, Prometheus, Grafana, which fits in each of the category of software development lifecycle. And nowadays, demand of Kubernetes and orchestration is too high. Kubernetes and Docker is too high because every company is thinking about deploying their applications, deploying their multi-tier application in microservices framework. Now, don't worry if you don't understand what multi-tier application is, what microservices application is. This is what we are going to cover in this curriculum. So this is about entire DevOps framework. Now it's the time I have to give you a quick demo. But even before I give you a quick demo, anyone has any questions, any doubts till here? Anyone has any question on what we are going to cover
सर
as a part of this? Yes, please.
वन क्वेश्चन सर, थैंक यू सर। इसकी जो सर ये सारी जो आपने करिकुलम डिस्कस की है सर, ये जिस तरह ग्राफाना, गिटहब और टेराफॉर्म, इस सर ये सारी जो टेक्नोलॉजी है सर, इसकी जो लैब होगी सर, वो हम कैसे, जिस तरह आप सिस्को में सर जो प्रॉब्लम आती है वो ये होती है कि जो रियल गेयर होता है वो काफ़ी रिसोर्स इंटेंसिव होता है, वो रैक पूरी एक्सेस करके वो सब कुछ करना पड़ता है। या और कोई भी टेक्नोलॉजी आप लर्न करें अगर उसकी मतलब लैब ना हो, जिस तरह जी स्केलर है सर, अब उसकी लैब का जो प्रॉब्लम है वो ये है कि वो इफ़ यू आर नॉट अ पार्टनर दे डोंट गिव यू द एक्सेस। तो सर इस टेक्नोलॉजी को लर्न करने में सर जो लैब होगी, जो प्रैक्टिकल हम हैंड्स ऑन करेंगे सर, उसका क्या वो होगा, तरीका होगा?
ये बहुत अच्छा सवाल पूछा आपने। तो
थैंक
जो
यू सर।
लैब है यही यही हमारा AWS काम आएगा, इमरान। तो AWS जैसा कि मैंने पहले बताया, AWS पहले क्या करते थे डेवऑप्स इंजीनियर, वो सारे के सारे टूल्स को अपने मशीन में सेटअप करते थे। अभी AWS आ गया, AWS ने क्या बोला कि भाई तुम अपने मशीन में इसको सेटअप करने की जगह पे आप AWS का प्लेटफॉर्म यूज करो। तो ये सारे के सारे टूल्स, टेराफॉर्म हो गए, क्यूबरनेटिस हो गए, डॉकर हो गए, ये एज अ सॉफ्टवेयर हम इंस्टॉल कर सकते हैं AWS के वर्चुअल मशीन पे। तो हम क्या करेंगे, AWS में जाएंगे, वहाँ वर्चुअल मशीन बनाएंगे और उस वर्चुअल मशीन में हम अपने सॉफ्टवेयर को, टेराफॉर्म हो गया, जितने भी सॉफ्टवेयर्स के मैंने नाम लिए, सारे के सारे सॉफ्टवेयर हम उसमें इंस्टॉल करेंगे। अब दूसरा क्वेश्चन, दूसरा सवाल यह आएगा आपके दिमाग में कि हम तो अभी लर्न कर रहे हैं सर, तो लर्न करते समय में AWS पे हम डिप्लॉय करेंगे तो सर्टनली कुछ ना कुछ तो कॉस्ट बेयर करना पड़ेगा। हाँ, कुछ एक सर्विसेज हैं जिसमें कि कॉस्ट बेयर करना है, लेकिन वो काफी मिनिमल होते हैं उसके चार्जेस। और उसके लिए मैं आपको सिखाऊंगा कि आप अपने अकाउंट में कैसे बजट सेट कर सकते हैं। लेकिन AWS क्या करता है, अगर आप न्यू यूजर हो तो AWS आपको वर्चुअल मशीन्स के लिए 750 आवर्स पर मंथ फ्री टीयर यूसेज प्रोवाइड करता है विदाउट एनी कॉस्ट। आप अपने वर्चुअल मशीन को इन अ मंथ 750 आवर्स तक अप रख सकते हो। उसके लिए वो उस वर्चुअल मशीन में आपको 8 GB कैपेसिटी भी देता है। तो इन टूल्स को रन करने के लिए या इंस्टॉल करने के लिए वो कैपेसिटी काफ़ी है, तो हम वही करेंगे। AWS में हम वर्चुअल मशीन बनाएंगे, हम इंश्योर करेंगे कि हमने प्रॉपर बजटिंग सेट किया हुआ है जो कि हमारे 750 आवर्स के लिमिट को एक्सीड ना करने दे। सारे टूल्स को उसमें इंस्टॉल करेंगे और वहाँ टेस्टिंग करेंगे।
ओके, ऑलराइट, ओके, थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू।
Cool. Any other question anyone has? Okay, fine. Now let me just quickly give you a small demo. So what I'm going to do is I spoke a lot about AWS virtual machine. So now what I'll do is I'll host a web server. I'll launch a web server. And in order to launch a web server, what I'll do is I'll create a virtual machine quickly on AWS console, AWS platform. And for that, I'll use the operating system. This operating system will be of Linux based operating system. There I'll open certain ports, SSH port, which works on port number 22, STTP port, which works on port number 80. I'll open these two ports and I'll run some automation so that as server comes up, my application or my website is hosted on AWS instance, and everything we will do on AWS console itself. And quite the same thing even you will be doing when as the course begins, as the course goes, you will be doing it a lot. So now I do have already my account created in AWS. Let me just quickly take you there. So this is how the AWS account looks like. This is how the AWS interface looks like. It is having a number of different features. You just consider it as a kind of dashboard at this point. Gradually, I'll explain each and every component of what this is, what instances are, so on and so forth. I'll be explaining everything. For now, what I'll do is I'll click on this launch instance. I'm launching something, I'm creating something. So I'll click on launch instance. As I click on launch instance, the first thing which it's asking me is what is the name of virtual machine which you want to create? It's asking me to define a name because perhaps it might happen that in your organization there can be tens or hundreds of virtual machine. You'll have to just give some specification to each of the virtual machines so that you can easily create one isolation segregation for each of virtual machine which can have some different set of purpose. So I'll use a tag for it. So there is a name tag, like the way you can see there is a name tag, and I'm giving the name tag as my first instance. For example, I just gave this name tag. You can add some additional tag in case if you want to. You can hit on add new tag. You can also say that the environment for which you want to use this instance, or for the application which you want to use this instance. You can use a number of different other tags also. But at this point, it's not needed. At this point, only the tag, which is the name tag where I give a name to my instance, virtual machine, which I'm creating, is my first instance. That's it. Now, after I have chosen the name of my instance, next which comes is the application or the OS which you want to use, which operating system you want to use to create this virtual machine. So like the way I said, I'm going to use one Linux based operating system. It's already chosen. Now you can choose anything. See, it is having a number of different itineraries. It has Ubuntu, Windows, Mac, so it is having their operating system divided in three different categories: Windows, Mac, and Linux. In Windows, there are not much options. In Mac, there is not much variations, but in Linux, a wide variation, a wide list is there wherein you can choose anything which you wish to. Again, once you decided it, it's more about now it's the time to decide what architecture of virtual machine you want to create. It can be 64-bit, it can be 32-bit. What type of architecture you want to choose? I'm choosing 64-bit architecture. Quite the specification. If you open the specification window for your Windows machine, you will see there if it's Windows 11, Windows 10, then is it 64X architecture? Is it 32X architecture? Right? So quite the same thing you will get in these operating system, in these virtual machine also. Now, once you have selected that, I'm keeping the values as default for now. but gradually I'll explain everything what these components are. Secondly, instance type. Now here I'm going to decide what is the purpose for which I want to use my this virtual machine. Based on my purpose, I'll just put in specifications. For example, if I'm choosing the option is T2 micro, with T2 micro, it comes up with one virtual CPU, 1 GB memory, and this much cost. But again, it's free tier eligible. So as far as I am falling under the category of free tier eligible, Amazon is not going to charge me. But yes, I have to stay in the limit of 750 hours. See, Amazon says everything. I'm just highlighting that part. It says that in your first year of opening an AWS account, you get 750 hours per month of T2 micro instance usage without any cost. So yes, as far as it's free tier eligible, Amazon is not going to charge me anything. Okay, so now once I've chosen the instance type, next comes the key pair. As of now, I'm not going to choose anything in key pair. So I'll say proceed without a key pair. But again, I'll explain you what key pair is. Next comes networking setting. In networking setting, I'll just select a security group. I'll select the existing one, but let's understand it in this way. With the use of security group, I'm opening ports. Security group, like the name says, it's a group which is doing something with security. It has to deal something with the security of my application or of my virtual machine, like the name says. So I'm just going to choose the default one at this point of time. Just choosing the default one. I'm keeping most of the values as default. Now it's offering me 8 GB of entire total memory. Fair enough, because I'm just associating one external hard disk, you can say, to which we call as elastic block storage, EBS, general purpose storage. I'm just associating to it to get some memory. But again, till the time I'm free tier eligible, I'll be able to use 30 GB every month. So whatever free tier it says, it's monthly the monthly reserve which I do have, monthly capacity which AWS is going to offer me. So now once I choose this, I'll click on advanced detail and I'll keep most of the values as default. And I scroll down and I'll come to the bottom which says user data. Now what is this user data? Let me just take a second and explain you what this user data is. Now I'm talking about hosting a web server. Now, certainly web server will not be pre-installed on this virtual machine because I'm just launching this virtual machine at this point of time. Certainly, I have to install this web server. I have to start web server services. Now, there are two ways I can do that. Either I can just I can launch the machine, then I log in into this machine and install these servers, install these services. Or what I do is I do automation. Now, since this course, which we are going to offer you, is all about making you capable in automation, we are going to talk about this user data rather than manually logging in and doing all sort of setup there in virtual machine. We will use this user data setup. And now I do have a small script. I do have a small script. So let me just quickly open that script which is there. Let me quickly do that. So perhaps it will be this one. Now, this is a small script. I'll explain you going forward what this script does, what this script is all about. For now, I'll just copy and paste this script there in user data block. That's it. Now you see what it does. It is going to run some commands, something. And this is what command is. You see, it is like this command, this command, this command, this command, and this command. So basically, I'm executing 5 commands. But since I have combined these commands together, it's forming a script for me. Script is nothing but it's combination of multiple commands, which in CLI, you will execute one after the other. Now, after putting all these values, I'm just going to hit on launch instance. Now it takes few seconds for the instance to launch. And yes, instance is running. Now, once the instance is running, you will be able to see everything. You will be able to see details of instance. This virtual machine is having a public IP, it is having a private IP. I'll talk about what public IP is, what private IP is in huge detail in our upcoming sessions. Now, let's see our application is hosted or not. So now I'm just going to copy the public IP address. I'll paste it. And as I hit enter, perhaps it's taking some time for it to host it. Let it run. Let it just do all sort of things which it's doing at this point of time. Now here what we are seeing, we are just seeing details. We are seeing security. Now this is what the security group I was talking about. Now I said that this security group has some ports open. Now you see this security group is having all the ports open at this point of time. It says all traffic, all protocol, all ports. So since it's default, it is having all the ports open at this point of time. Now let me just refresh this page once again. Okay, for some reason it's not hosting. Perhaps it's going to take a few more seconds for that thing to complete. Or maybe if I miss something. Okay, but ideally what it is supposed to do is, it is supposed to bring a application up for me, which for some reason, sure at this point why it's lagging, but certainly it is going to bring it. But no problem. In our upcoming sessions, as the session goes, we'll talk about this in huge detail. We'll perhaps do separate sort of configuration for this security group. We'll try to understand how this security group works, what it is going to do for me, so on and so forth. We'll talk about that in huge detail. Okay. I'll just give a pause. Anyone has any questions, any doubt, and perhaps it's the end of our session, our today's demo session. So in case anyone has any questions in whatever I spoke about in our curriculum today, please let me know. Or any doubt on what we are going to cover in this session, what we are going to talk about in this session, what you are going to learn from this session, what sort of prerequisites, prior experiences you need to have to work on these applications, please ask me now. Okay, cool. So I believe there is no questions. I believe you liked the session. I believe you understood what we are going to cover, right? But in case if you do have further questions, perhaps you can get in touch with your counselor and they will be able to provide you more of the details. And sooner I'll expect you in our upcoming sessions. Thank you, everyone. Over
Thank
to
you
you,
so
Pankaj.
much, sir. Thank you so much for a great session. Thank you, everyone. See you again next class. Bye-bye. Good night. Thank you.
Okay, sir.